It's no secret that I love maps. If you've seen some of my other videos, you'll have seen the giant 3D printed maps I've made of London and San Francisco. I love those maps. They made it here to Denver from San Francisco with only a few buildings snapped off, and I still hang them on the wall. I will fix them later, I promise. But there's something missing about them. They're just basically sort of plain. They're white. They're missing the details that make them a map. The roads, the contour lines, all the pieces that made me love paper maps as a child, and I still do today. And so when I took delivery of my laser cutter last week, I thought of many projects, and I'm sure you'll see some videos in some of them in the future. But the thing I first started on was, of course, a map. And in particular, a map that has detail. Today, I'm going to show you the prototype of that map, describe a bit of the build process and how I keep going about it, and in general, try and outline for you the process of making maps like these. But to start, let's look at the map. In this case, it is a three-dimensional map of the landscape of the video game Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, Breath of the Wild is one of my favorite games. One of the big reasons for that is its landscape. The sheer beauty in the terrain design, the biomes, the landmarks, the sight lines, all the things that make that game up are one of the things I remember the most about it. And so I thought it was a very fitting thing to immortalize my very first attempt at making a printed, detailed, three-dimensional color map. The map is essentially a three-dimensional representation of the map you see in-game on the map screen, but of course with 3D added. I took the graphics from that map and then added the height map and carved around contours to make it three-dimensional. Things like the mountains and the volcano here stand out and are three-dimensional. Things like the giant valley, which runs across here, have proper depth to them. So let's talk a little bit about how I made this. Contour maps tend to be one of the easier, good-looking laser cutter projects to start with. All you need is a big flat sheet of material and some contour lines readily available from your local GIS program, and you can cut around contours of material, glue them together, and get an honestly pretty good looking result. But that, of course, is without detail and printing. One of the things I wanted to capture, unlike my 3D printed maps, was to have the actual details and paths and textures on the map itself. And that requires a bit more work, because what it does is it requires two things. One, a thick flat material you can print on, and secondly, laser cutting round the contours and the print lines exactly aligned with where the actual printing is. So with that first problem, printing onto a thick flat material, I have an issue. I do have a decently sized, capable printer here. You can see it behind me, right there. It can print onto about 1.3 millimeter thick or less materials, but the problem is I don't have any materials that have a high quality printing surface that are that thick. I have some acrylic, I have some cardboard, but neither of those really suit the particular project. So what I did is I made my own essentially composite material. I printed onto some thin cardstock, and I took this cardstock and I layered it onto two more sheets of poster board, essentially making a 3-ply thick piece of material. Now, the way I did that is I just took the sheets, I cut the poster board down to size. This is a US letter size, which is 8.5 by 11 inches. I then stuck a load of glue between the layers, slapped them together, and then put them in a press for about an hour. I don't really have a good press, so I used my heat press with the heat turned off, obviously, and that got a reasonable set. There's a little bit of curve to it, which I'll talk about later. Now, the second problem, as I mentioned, is aligning the laser cut marks with the actual print lines. You can see on a piece like this that you have to essentially cut round all the individual pieces very precisely to make sure it works properly. The output from my program only puts down color where there's going to be a cut piece, just so it helps you work out what you need to do, and also so you can tell where things go. You can see, for example, here that there is this shading where there's terrain above, and there is no shading where there's terrain below. So I know what to discard when the laser cut is done. But lining these up is difficult. And in some systems, like my vinyl cutter, which is the blue bag over there, it has built-in registration where you print registration marks on your final output, and the machine itself can scan and line itself up with those marks. I unfortunately do not have a laser cutter that's that nice. And so instead, I had to literally go in there, put down the sheet of paper, weight it down, and yes, I used cutlery because I don't have any weights yet, and manually line it up by eye. The nice thing is the laser head does have a little red dot pointer, so you can essentially place down the piece of material, put the red dot pointer on the corner, and then run what's called a framing command, which makes the pointer just trace around the outline of what it's going to cut. And this gives you a good idea of the alignment. And essentially, all I did is I put it down, I placed one corner in, I lined it up pretty well, hit frame, worked out where I was gone wrong, and like manually, slowly slewed it into alignment. In the end, getting within about 0.5 millimeter or so by eye, which is good enough for a result like this. Now, once you've got your laser cut pieces, the final and in some ways most fun and also most annoying part of the project is to glue them together. You have to take every single layer and extract every single piece, place a layer of glue on it, and put it where it's supposed to go. Now, this is a time-consuming process, and it is complicated by the fact that this is quite a small size. My final piece is going to be bigger, but for now it's quite small. And so all the small details like mountains and small holes are very, very small pieces that tend to fall through the honeycomb of the laser cutter. So several times I had to take up the honeycomb, take up the knives, which is basically this layer underneath honeycomb that things sit on, reach into the space underneath where all the parts fall, extract the small pieces, and then manually glue them on. Not only that, my lamination of my cheap poor man's composite material was pretty bad. I'd missed a few places with glue. And so sometimes the small pieces would be entirely where there wasn't glue and just peel apart into 3 layers. And so I spent most of this morning just sitting there, taking these small pieces, putting them on, gluing them back together, and trying to line them up properly. There's a few errors in my final result, things like these edges here not being lined up properly, but at the end of the day, I'm pretty happy with it. After all, perfect is the enemy of good, and this is pretty good. There are a couple of problems I mentioned. The delamination is one of them. I think getting a better, thicker material, maybe a thicker cardboard and a single layer of paper is a good start to that. But also the bending. If I hold this up to the camera, you can see it's got quite a curve to it. That is also a result, I suspect, of my pretty poor attempt at lamination. What I really need is a single printable piece of material that is nice and thick and I can layer like this, but unfortunately those just don't really exist at a certain price point. Some paper mills do sell 1 or 2 millimeter thick cardboard that has a nice printable surface, bonded at the factory, but that stuff is very, very expensive and I can't afford to buy enough big sheets of it for the full size version of this. I might try foam core or foam board. It tends to be pretty good at holding its shape and you can paste onto it pretty easily. The main problem is when you laser cut it, you end up with these weird things where it cuts the top and bottom surface properly, but the foam inside shrinks away and it makes a sort of weird concave edge. It doesn't look very good. By contrast, the edges on this, while they are the standard everything is burnt laser cut look, the slight blackening of the edges almost adds a little bit of detail and contrast that pulls out the terrain and makes it look much better, which of course is helped by the cartoonish look of the map in the first place. As a result, I'm not quite sure what to do, but I'll keep you updated. I'll probably try the foam core with a layer of paper on top just to see how it looks. I don't think the edges will work pretty well and it does smell really bad when you laser cut it. I also have some thin cardboard I might try the same thing with as well. I have some acrylic sheets, which is an expensive way to go, but I could manually cut the paper and acrylic and glue them together later. I've done that a lot here anyway. But I do know one thing, which is the final size of this will be quite a bit larger. Now again, this is US letter size because I printed it quickly on cheap paper. I do plan to make the final version as big as my printer will go. This printer behind me prints up to what is called Super B, which is 13 by 19 inches. For illustration, this here is a piece of Super B paper. You can see it's almost double the size of the original map. And I think that will really help me add a lot of detail and really show off some more of the terrain in Breath of the Wild. Now, of course, as I scale it horizontally, I'll need to scale it vertically. This 1 millimeter thick solution isn't going to cut it. It looks pretty good now at scale, but if I made it just wider and not taller, it would look really flat as a result. So I do need that thick material, but hey, that's part of the fun. And of course, this, while it's a prototype, is not my first prototype. In fact, this is my first prototype. You can see here there's a few issues, the reason I abandoned it. First of all, it's very dark. I didn't color correct this on the way out of the game, and so it's just the default look and it's really does not pop as much as you'd want for a map on the wall. Secondly, the output from the software did not distinguish white areas where there's terrain above from white areas that were discardable, thrown away. As a result, there are several pieces on this map that I lost because I couldn't tell, as I was pulling them out of the cutter, exactly whether they're supposed to be kept or thrown away. So the final piece of the puzzle is that software that takes an image and contours and makes something like this, and the images I can print off of. Now, I started doing that entirely manually. I took the data, I loaded it into QGIS, which is sort of a mapping geospatial program. I ran the contour algorithm. I took the contours, exported them to Inkscape, tried to clean up around the lines. It didn't really work. And so in the end, I sat down and wrote a lot of Python, as is my wont to do. And in the end, I kind of made it a lot better. It took a few hours and some misfires and some different attempts. But in the end, I have a piece of software that takes two things, a height map and an image, and it generates all the image files to cut and all the cut files for you. You can literally feed it any two images that match in projection, and that's very important for the real world. And it will happily give you a contour file, an image file like this for every layer. You feed the contour file to a cutter, you line up the image file printed out in your cutter, and away you go. As a result, while Breath of the Wild will be the first thing I make full size, it's probably not the last thing I make. I can take any data that I have height maps for and images for. For the real world, that's pretty much anywhere on Earth. There's a NASA dataset that has height maps for the entire globe, and there's pretty good aerial or satellite imagery of the entire globe as well, thanks to the Blue Marble and other newer projects. For fictional games, it's a bit of a harder time. You have to extract both a height map, which many games do have built into the engine some way, just going to try and extract it out, and also a top-down view. If the game actually has a map, this helps a lot. But if the game doesn't have one of those, you've got to try and stitch it together from overhead shots in engine. It becomes a very, very difficult process. So I'm going to work on those. I did think about going after Skyrim as well, but that's one of those games that can be really hard to extract a aerial view from. Height map, not too bad. Aerial view, much worse. So we'll see. But first thing is take Breath of the Wild and scale it out to full size. So hopefully I'll report back to you with more on that and my trials and tribulations. If I use the foam core, how bad it really does smell and how much I have to sort of ventilate the garage to get the gases out. It's not that dangerous, it just smells bad. But until then, I'll leave you with a few more shots of the Breath of the Wild map, and I'll see you next time.